Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of 6 Degrees of Associations. I'm your host, Lucas McCann. With me today, very special guest, Lori Anderson, President CEO of International Sign Association. Welcome to the show, Lori.
Thank you so much. Great to be here.
Wonderful. Glad to have you. I will turn the mic over. People aren't here to hear me, Lori. They're here to hear you. So tell us a little bit about, maybe go back in time, tell us how you found this crazy world of associations, and then we'll work our way forward.
Sure. I started out my very first real grown-up job was a teacher. I was a music teacher. And after bouncing around from two different schools in two very diverse areas of the country, one rural, 60 miles from a grocery store, kind of rural, to suburb of Baltimore. And I said, you know what? I don't think it's the geographic area. I just don't think I want to be a teacher forever. So I stopped and I went to see a career counselor. He asked me a question that basically changed my life. And he asked me, what gets me angry? Like, what really gets me burning? What gets me hot? And at the time, it was a particular political person. Won't get into all the details on that. But he looked at me and said, well, why don't you do something in politics if you're so passionate about it? I said, I'm a former music teacher. Who would hire me? And he goes, well, if you're passionate, why not give it a try? And so 9 months later, I convinced a member of Congress to hire me. Not sure exactly how that happened, but I did. And so I worked there for a couple of years, and I was being lobbied by associations. And I said, I want to do that. So then I started my job search and looking for position in an association, and happened that the individual who in one of my interviews asked me a lot of questions about my music background, which was interesting, but didn't really understand why until I was offered the job, because he is a musician and his wife was a music teacher, and so he saw a connection between a liberal arts background and the art of lobbying, if you will. And so then I was 14 years in an association in government relations, and then thought I wanted to lead one. So that took a couple of years of navigating the landscape of how to work with recruiters and convincing a different type of person, in this case a search committee, that someone who was a former music teacher could potentially lead an organization. And that's how it all happened.
Well, the similarities, the connections, I should say, are abound. So my wife is a 20-year teacher, fifth grade, not music, all the things in fifth grade. And then her brother is a musician. And then full circle, I had always wanted to lead. So there's all our connections all in one. So
yeah, well, and I often say to my board, I said, there's times I'm going to just pull the teacher face and we need to, quiet down, kids. We need to focus. So, I think there's a connection. And I also made the analogy that really what I'm doing is directing an orchestra and paying attention to maybe this side of the room needs to be a little quieter or louder, or we want to hear from this voice a little bit more. It's all a matter of direction and having the ability to kind of see what the entire picture of the final performance would look like and trying to make it happen.
I've never heard the symphony metaphor, but it works perfectly. If you know sort of thing, in your seat. It is an orchestra. It's a symphony. Everybody has to play together. And when you do, the music is beautiful.
Magical.
Magical. Yeah,
indeed.
And also, we don't use the teacher face in my house, but she will very much threaten often to use her teacher voice, is how she puts it. So don't make me use my teacher voice.
I now have a certain clap I do when I need to get them quiet, and they're used to it. They just do the echo response. They go, oh, there she goes again. It's the middle school teacher.
Well, if they didn't know after they're hearing this, maybe now they'll know. But they know. It's well laid out there. Well, what's kept you in it? People enter associations, I found, in all different forms or fashions, sometimes by accident, sometimes it was a family connection, and your case, it sounded like a personal passion based on even a single conversation that launched you into it. But what's kept you in it all this time?
I just love the concept of bringing people together for a common good. And it is, I don't think I would do well. I once said to a member of my prior organization, I said, I could never do what you do, and he's in sales. He's in global sales. And he laughed and said, Lori, you are in sales every day. You just don't think of it as sales. I like bringing people together, selling them concepts and a vision. And it's never, ever dull. I mean, every single day is a brand new adventure, and I love that about this work.
Yeah, I can echo that too. No 2 days are the same in the association world. And yes, at the head of things, you aren't keeping a pipeline in Salesforce and knocking on doors and making 100 phone calls, but you absolutely are the face and selling of the mission and all the great work behind it. And I like to think of as small organizations that do great things, right? Your impact as an association leader is tremendous. And it's like a megaphone.
100%. Our organization is relatively small. I would say in the association world, we're kind of in the small to mid-sized association. But tell me a time you don't go out and about and not see a sign, right? Sign and graphics literally get you everywhere you need to go, including the way to an emergency room when you need it, or simply turn here. And so we've established a phrase or a mantra we do that signs help communities thrive. And that sign company in your local area may be a pretty small company, but in the scheme of things, they make a hell of a big difference.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. So is it the people? Is it the mission? Is it the work? What is it day to day that really drives you?
Yes.
Yeah.
But
is there a D? All the above? Yeah.
Well, I think they all have to be present. If the people weren't great to work with, you're just miserable. You may believe in the mission, but if the people weren't great to work with, it would be not a good environment. So it's probably number one on that list, he said. These folks, ISA members are relatively small. They're hardworking. A lot of them are family run, and they're very passionate about what they do. And there's a really significant artistic streak. They view their product that they produce as in artistic terms. There's a lot of graphic designers in the industry. They're very passionate about how something looks and feels. And they very much are supportive of each other, not unlike the association profession, how we all support each other. Sign companies tend to really work to support the industry as a whole, and that even includes supporting your competitors.
I do want to talk about sort of some longevity in your role that you've had and some benefits to that, because it is almost somewhat unique. I know a couple of others that have stayed at one association, but you picked at something just for a second, so I'll lean in on it. Just the support within the association community. I had the pleasure of attending CMA conference, for example, recently, and it's a wonderful community. What would you, how would you put that up on a pedestal or describe that as a benefit to you specifically?
The Council of Manufacturing Associations. It was the first organization as a CEO I joined. I had been involved with NAM on the staffing side because of their government relations work prior. But that community is the association profession as a whole. They really are supportive. And if you can't find an answer for something, somebody will have already gone through this. And the most important advice that I could give to anyone in this profession, if you want to be a CEO or if you don't, it doesn't matter, is find a group, better yet, multiple groups, where you can be vulnerable and share what you're going through, and the rewards of what you get back far outpace anything. When I'm in part of so many groups, and as soon as I was part of CMA, And when I joined ISA, it was a very tumultuous time for the organization. I was the 5th CEO in 6 years. Huge turnover in staff, huge turnover everywhere. Nobody was getting along with anyone. I was a brand new CEO. I had no idea how to navigate. I felt like I was stepping on landmines every other second. And the emotional support and advice I received from CMA, in particular at the time, colleagues, was just invaluable. And then when I went through serving on that board as chair of the board, I continued to want to serve the association community. And I was also part of the ASAE board, which is a wonderful, wonderful time. When I walked into that room, I didn't know anyone. I knew all the people at CMA, but now here's this whole new universe of professional societies and other, not just manufacturing associations, that just really strengthened that network and that body of resource that you have when you have groups that can reach out. I can literally think of almost no major decision, either vendors to work with or problems to solve, or I need to hire this kind of person, that hasn't been helped by reaching out to so many association colleagues.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The vulnerability aspect, right? It's difficult to talk about some of the challenges just in a general forum as you want to be the beacon of light for your mission, but around your colleagues and peers, especially at that CMA event, there's a lot of trust in that room, in that community. And I would also add, it doesn't have to be as big or formal. I've seen some association executives that are in informal groups of 3 or 4, and they get together maybe 2 times a year or 4 times a year, maybe once a quarter. And it wasn't something that was formed. They just reached out to some people they know or felt like we're in a similar position of size, location, industry, what have you, and formed these groups. And so I think that's some of the best advice there is out there, is to
and when
together.
I've been a part of groups and it wasn't a group that was willing to share the struggles, I don't really find the value, and sometimes I don't go as often, or because it's more, if you're not willing to be vulnerable and really share the experience you're going through, you're just not going to get as much back in return.
Yeah, it's a good. How do you identify that early stage? Because I think some people could be listening and say, well, how do I know if I'm in one of those groups that is transparent? It's sort of it's a gray area.
Well, if it's a lot of bragging,
there you go.
Then unless you're looking for that. I mean, maybe you are.
Some people just need a pat and a lift up.
Right. If it's just like trying to just brag about everything you do, then that's not necessarily. If you have really, truly good advice to add, like, I tried this and it didn't work, and then I tried this and it did work. Or if you're in a group where it's basically you're trying to compete with each other on who has the largest pack or something, I don't know, right? Then
who's got the most revenue growth or most number of members added, or
then, I mean, maybe that's what you're looking for, and that's fine too. But that wasn't what I was looking for, and it's not what sustains me.
Yeah, I think most of people would agree with you that what really sets you up for longer term success is being vulnerable with people, as you said, being able to share your challenges and know that people will openly share. Hey, I have that challenge as well, or I had that challenge. Let me share with you, and then let me share with you one of my challenges. Maybe we can learn from each other. Being a lifelong learner in that sense, and kind of opening the kimono.
Exactly.
Well, I want to go back. You've been at ISA 20 plus years, yes?
This is starting my 21st year.
There you go. What has been a benefit of being with the organization that long?
Well, first I thought I was doing something wrong, because when I first was in the CEO role, so many people said, don't stay longer than 5 years. And definitely don't stay longer than 7. And I was at 5 years, and I felt like I had just figured it out. I had just figured out how to help the industry move forward. And so I'm not done yet. There's still so much to accomplish. And I still am challenged every single day. There's always another hill to climb. And importantly, the members truly value their association team, and they feel that we're in it together. It's not the board just saying, you do this. It's like a collaborative approach. And I mean, that took a while to get there, and now we're here, and the board views the staff as an extension of themselves to help better the entire industry. And it's worked, right? I mean, if you feel that your time is valued, like if you feel like the gifts that you bring are valued by the community you serve, and you enjoy working with them. I know of colleagues who dread going to their board meetings. I love going to, they're just wonderful people to hang around with. Not just the work itself, but the receptions and the bar after. They're good people, and I enjoy their company. And I think it boils down to, I can be my authentic self. And if I was at an organization, say I was 5 years in and I felt I could not be my authentic self, then I probably would have moved on. But if you can be your authentic self, I don't have to change personality. I don't have to be one person with my friends or at home or with my family or work. I can be the same person in both. I think there's something to be said for that. I enjoy every day working with my colleagues at ISA and with the members. So why leave?
There you
right?
go. Yeah, I mean, I say life's too short to be miserable. And so
if I was miserable, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't have lasted 21 years. But,
clearly not miserable. You're not putting up with it. I know you well enough for that.
And every single time, you're going to have miserable times. There's going to be struggles, but nothing lasts forever. And if you enjoy the work and the people you're working with, unless there is a compelling reason, and I haven't seen that so far, right? It's been good.
I'm usually at our organization, I'm the last interview that people come to, and we put a lot of emphasis on culture. And so I tell them up front, like, if you've made it to this interview, it means we know, our staff knows that you could do the role of the job, right? You could do what's required of you on a day-to-day basis. And my job at this point is to find out if you're going to fit well in this culture both ways, right? Are you going to like the culture that we've built? And is the culture going to embrace you, accept you? Is this going to be a place where you're going to flourish? So how do you do that in your association, right? Staff and board, what are the type of things that you lean into intentionally? Because as you said, you just don't want to be around those people. And it sounds like you love the people you're around and you like working with them through thick or thin.
Well, culture fit is probably the hardest thing to interview for. And there are times where we have said, you know what, your talents would fit better in another organization. And we have a culture code that the staff developed, and we talk about it, and we talk about not just the words in it, but what it means on a regular basis to be part of that code. And then, it's a different staff now than when we first developed the culture code, 10-ish or more years ago. Should we change? I mean, we've had those conversations, like, is this still an aspiration? A culture isn't where you are now, it's an aspirational. And if we all agree that these are still things we want to aspire to do, then let's make sure we continue to talk about them and do them. On the board, we also talk about culture. It's important with our nominating committee and process of our leadership development committee. You can have a great resume, but if you're not a team player, then maybe you don't fit on our board. If you just want to run things and have it be my way or the highway, it's probably not a spot for you. Even the executive committee, we talk about how it's not the chair that comes in and says, these are my goals this year. it's the board creating the goals and then the chair helping to make sure we come together to accomplishment. I've seen boards, and I've experienced it, where a board chair starts the year and surprise to everybody, here are my goals. Yeah, and it's like, well, that really isn't the role of the board chair. It's the entire board come together. So we talk about, we have a leadership development path. So we kind of get to know people to see if they're one that wants to help the overall industry or they're coming with a selfish intent.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, you should be pulling on the collective, right? If you have one person that stands up in the room and says, get in line, that's not going to work. From a personality standpoint, from a mission standpoint, I mean, all the above, right? I don't know that there are, but I'll ask anyway, any potential negatives for being in a single association for going on 21 years?
Oh, yeah, there is. And I have to, there 100% is. And it can get too comfortable. I don't feel like I'm slowing down. I feel like I'm constantly still striving. But you hear of people who are just, I think they're coasting, right? They're just waiting until, they retire in the next number of years. Yeah, it's comfortable. And I hope that I would be challenged if it was sensed that I'm too comfortable. Like if I'm not acting on new ideas and figuring out a new way to do things. I would hope that people, that I'm open enough to be able to receive that criticism. The other danger is the twatty. It's TWA, the way we always did it. That's probably the biggest one. Our senior team has been together for a long time. And when we have new people in, we need to remind ourselves not to immediately say, oh, that's not the way we do it. We need to pause and say, okay, let's talk about a different way to do it, because it can get very comfortable to do things the same way over and over again, the same way, and quickly shoot down something that was done in the past. And so those two things come to mind immediately as a danger of someone staying in one place for a long time.
Yeah, I think, we've done a couple of acquisitions, and that is the biggest area of opportunity is coming into an organization and we're doing sort of an evaluation. Okay, why have you all done this? 90+% of the time, what we hear is, well, that's just how we've always done it. And you rock the boat in a couple of different ways. One, you rock the boat in sort of more of a global sense of, okay, we're getting people out of their comfort zone. They're going to have to learn new things and learn to do it in a new way, even if it's better. And then two, you have the individual personalities that may take hold of something and said, wait, I'm in charge of that. Like, you're going to come in and just change something that I do. I mean, that's a challenge.
Yeah. And, we haven't had a lot of turnover, especially in the senior staff. And now we're currently interviewing for a new vice president of marketing communications. I am so excited about new ideas, but we're going to have to remind ourselves that same very thing, that we may not be doing it the same way we've always done, and let this person make their mark and try and likely fail at some point, because we all do, but celebrate the failures because we're learning as we go.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of failures, I asked you ahead of time if I could ask you about a failure, and you said, okay, so I'll ask now because you brought it up. So, what is something that you failed and learned from in your career? I mean, again, thinking of our younger audience, or maybe our not so younger audience, because everybody makes mistakes at any point, how can we help somebody avoid something that they might be running towards now?
Well, one thing is, when you inevitably make a mistake, it's to realize that not everything, like what I said before, nothing is forever, and put it behind you and keep moving on. And it's one of the hardest things any humans can do, right? We tend to wallow in the mistakes and forget about our successes. I mean, there's a myriad of little things more than anything else. It's being more willing to take risks, wishing, gosh, if I would have just taken a risk and gone a little faster, or not recognizing the impact of a bad culture fit and dealing with it quicker. Those can really be difficult, but dealing with it quickly would be my best advice. And I try not to dwell in it, looking back and figuring out how I would have done something different, because it's impossible to go back in time. So it's not really worth the energy to think about
tried.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I probably would say I would have dealt with those things quicker.
Yeah. It is, I like to think, as long as we're learning from these mistakes and we're growing and getting better, it was for the right reasons. Right. Well, I want to switch gears and ask you just a couple of fun ones as we get closer to the end of this interview. And the first one is, you're looking ahead at your calendar each year. What is something that you not pencil in? You rip out the heavy ink pen and it's going in, and we'll build everything around this. What is that for Lori?
Personal is, I really do close most things off at the end of the day. And I rarely bring the computer out to work. Your inbox will be there when you die.
Yeah.
So don't take it with you. Does that mean I don't think about it? I think about it at 3 o'clock in the morning when I wake up, thinking about that to-do list. But and so what I ink in is, it's not inking in, it's inking out. It's like, shut it off when it's ready to go, and do other things, and that is very mentally healthy. The other, for personally, I read a lot, so I read tons, and mostly novels. I need to just break away and think of something else. I love to cook, and so I'm constantly doing that, and I'm a Peloton cult member. So every morning I work out for 45 minutes to an hour every morning.
Are you a bike or a tread cult member?
I have a bike, but I do all their strength and yoga and Pilates and all of their classes. So I do that every day. So those are the inked in for my personal. For professional, what has been transformative that I book every year is attending the ASAE CEO Symposium. And this is for board training. And many associations bring their board chair. Our organization decided I was going to go every year with the secretary-treasurer of the board. That way, all members of the executive committee are trained in governance. And so we're all speaking the same language. And I go next week with my new secretary-treasurer, and it's a time to really get to know each other. And if there was one, and attending the Council of Manufacturing Associations, either both, or at least
pen in more than one thing. It's fine.
Or at least one of their leadership conferences would be the must-do activities on my calendar.
Well, it sounds like the incoming secretary timing and all that's working out really well for this year. That's wonderful.
We do it the January or February every year.
That's wonderful.
So this is like my 18th time of going to the same conference. And
it must be good.
The interesting thing is I learn every single time, because you're learning with someone who has never gone through it. And so it's that one-on-one, and you learn about what makes that board member tick, and they learn what makes me tick. And it makes a very cohesive executive committee. We are truly a team.
Yeah, whether it was that event or another, I mean, just the benefits of getting together with somebody like that in person, getting to know them, as you said, how they tick, break some bread with them, have a glass of wine if that's your thing. That just seems like an invaluable building block for that very important relationship.
100%.
Yeah. What was your favorite book last year? Do you remember your favorite novel? Do you have one?
Well, I think I read over 70, so
Oh, my goodness.
I might have to. I have multiple going all at the same time. I always have an audiobook going at the same time. So when I'm cooking, I'm
there you
listening
go.
to a book. Sometimes that does interesting things for the results of the cooking, I will say. Sometimes not so good.
That's an interesting influence. I had not thought about that. While I'm listening to a book, if that somehow changes, how I might prepare something.
I can't look through all of them right now to tell you my favorite.
That's okay. What about a cuisine? Do you have a preferred cuisine? You said you like to cook.
A book that I loved a book. It's called How to Read a Book.
Oh.
It was a lovely novel, and it kind of tugged on the heartstrings. And I also read a lot of social justice books and memoirs. I just think it's important for people to understand different shoes and understand what people are going through.
Absolutely. Well, again, the similarities continue there. My wife is a teacher. She wakes up at 4:45. She does the Peloton thing, and she's also an avid reader. So
there you go.
I know you even more now, Lori, because I have you at home, so to speak. So what about something about Lori that we couldn't find on the internet or on your resume? A lot can be found on the internet these days, and you're an open book, as you've said. But, fun fact about Lori.
Oh my gosh. I mean, I grew up on a farm, but to the extent that, you can take a girl out of the farm, but you can't take a farm out of the girl. I mean, we were not wealthy at all, Depression era parents. And so I tend to be frugal by nature. And I don't know, I have that Midwest type of soul.
Yeah, I love it. I think you mentioned earlier that there was a suburb of Baltimore, was it, that was 60 miles to the grocery store?
This was when I taught in North Dakota.
Oh, okay, in North Dakota, got it.
Yeah, and it was on a Native American reservation, which was a whole nother experience. But we were 60 miles from a grocery store. Wow.
I was 45 minutes to the grocery store. I mean, minutes, not miles. We drive fast on those country roads, but it seemed like it was 45 minutes. And this was in Virginia, but more rural part. I was 45 minutes to the grocery store, 45 minutes to high school, 45 minutes to my friend's house, not all in the same direction. So I can relate.
Oh, 100%. I mean, our closest neighbor was 3 miles away, and
mine was a little farm on the horizon. It looked about this big. Mrs. Alexander's farm was quite large, and her house stood on the top of the hill. But that was the only neighbor we had for many years. And I remember moving up here to Northern Virginia. I'm in Falls Church, and my now wife, then girlfriend, I said, we're going to go to this party. And I said, well, how far away is it? She goes, well, we're not going to the party. It's too far away. I said, well, how far is it? She's like, it's outside the Beltway. It's 15 minutes away. I go, I barely got out of my neighborhood in 15 minutes.
Yeah. I love it when people ask, when they find out I grew up on a farm in North Dakota, they go, what did you do there growing up? I'm like,
whatever you wanted.
What did you do? I mean, wasn't it cold and snowed? Well, yes, that didn't stop us from doing anything. My school was almost never closed.
That's it.
I mean, the snow was literally to the top of the houses, but school was open.
We found stuff to do is the answer. You make believe, you make stuff up, you build stuff, you break stuff. And
and my siblings were a lot older than myself, and so I was kind of effectively an only child on a farm. So you have to just be creative.
That's it. We would race things and fight each other because I was one of all boys. So it was a crazy town and a crazy farm. So, well, thank you, Lori. I had the unfortunate pleasure of wrapping us up. But before we do so, I'd love to hear if there's somebody in your network that you think our audience would benefit from hearing from.
I'm a practitioner of meditation and mindfulness, and it has sustained me over some very difficult and challenging times, as well as realizing that even in the best of times that nothing is permanent. So one of my dearest friends got me started in mindfulness, and he is an association executive. And he's very passionate about it and even teaches mindfulness as a theory related to leadership. So I think that he would be a fascinating interview for you. Stephen Gold with the Manufacturers Alliance.
Excellent. I know, Stephen. I did not know about the mindfulness. I've learned all sorts of things today, Lori. I know your time is very precious, so thank you for sharing with us and your story and everything. I
didn't ask his permission, but I know he's very passionate about it. He serves on the board of the Insight Meditation Community of Washington, a nonprofit that does meditation retreats and workshops all year long.
You're giving away Stephen's fun fact, but I know he's got more. So that'll be great.
He has a lot of data on mindfulness and its importance in leadership.
Wonderful. Well, thank you for the referral. And again, thank you for the time, Lori. We really appreciate it.
Thank you. It was enjoyable. Thank you so much.